Hi, everybody, and welcome to our podcast Unmute Now, Season 5, Episode 3. We're glad you've been with us. For those of you who've kept us company, I'm your lead host today. I'm Yolande, and Angela is with me today as our co host.
Hi, everyone.
If you've been following us and if you've been part of the season 5 journey, you would know that we would be losing, well, not losing, we've been missing Raquel for the entire season, but we're missing Natasha only for today. Work calls. And it's a good way to introduce today's episode. The topic of today's episode is Black women at work. We'll be speaking to two women from our community in the healthcare sector at different levels or in different areas, so to speak. We'll be introducing them shortly, and we'll be looking at how they navigate the workplace and some of the obstacles they face. But I have to remind you that season 5 comes on the back of our symposium held in October, the month of Black History Month. And we are looking at some of the issues or topics that would have been fed back from attendees at the symposium. And one of the things that we got during that symposium was how difficult it was for women, how difficult it was, sorry, for women to have given up their Saturdays to come and join us after a hard week at work. And so be it, we're recording on a Saturday today, but these women have kindly agreed to join us. So before we get into the discussion, I'm going to introduce to you our first guest, Swangile. And Swangile is a professional within the pharmaceutical industry. Swan, she's affectionately called Swan. Please, if I mispronounce your name, help me. I'm not South African. So there you know it. Swan is originally from South Africa, but she'll tell us a bit more about herself. I can't speak today, sorry.
No, you're
Swan,
perfectly
hi, how are
fine.
you?
I'm good. How are you? So just to introduce myself a little bit, I'm Swangile, and the reason I said South African is because it's traditionally a South African name, but I was actually born in Zimbabwe. A little bit about myself. I was working in the pharmaceutical industry for 4 years, and then I decided to venture into my own thing within the dermatology and beauty skincare industry. So hence the skincare by Sasha. But that's me.
Thank you, Swan. And our second guest today is a lovely lady who works within the healthcare sector as a healthcare assistant. She's Patricia Morgan Lynch in other circles. Patricia, how are you?
Hi, good afternoon, guys. I'm really tired. I had a night shift and I just tried to get myself up. Hence the reason why I'm not on camera. And I must
So,
apologize for that. I'm really tired. I'm shattered. Just two back-to-back night shifts. My name is Patricia Morgan Lynch. I'm currently originally from the Caribbean, the lovely island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I migrated here um, about 13, 14 years ago. And currently been working as a healthcare assistant for the past 10 years. I love my job. I'm passionate about it. And yeah, that's it.
wow. See, already we're getting into the obstacles. The
See the
fact that you can't get
sacrifice
your
then.
beauty,
Thank you.
you can't get your beauty face on after back-to-back night shift, and she has to remain
Well,
off camera. Grace to you, my dear, and thank you
well,
for your
listen,
contribution.
maybe Swan has some tips. Maybe there's some stuff that can help to perk you up. You never know.
You know what,
I
Swan? You
actually
know
do.
what,
So
Swan?
let's talk.
At the moment you said you're a dermatologist,
Right, ladies,
my
it's a pleasure having
my
you, and we're going to just get straight into the discussion. One of the
Sorry,
things I want,
Yolanda. Sorry. Patricia was saying something just then.
No, I was just saying to Swan, the moment you said you're a dermatologist, my radar went up because I said, okay, I need to have a chat with you at some point.
Uh,
well, yeah, this
don't
is where we
worry, call me.
network. Absolutely. This is where we network as women, as Black women. So, ladies, we're gonna have a chat, as I said, about some of the obstacles you face, and again, positive experiences that you might have within the workplace. So, it would have been great if we had a whole host of women spread across that many industries or that professions, if we had had somebody in self-employment, whatever. So we're going to invite you, our audience, please, please, please share your experiences because we can only talk about so much in half an hour. Patricia and Swan, maybe I'm just going to throw this out there and I'm just going to ask you point blank. Is there any particular challenge that you face in your line of work or challenges, Swan?
So one of the challenges I'm facing is the fact that um being being African and also living in Belfast and trying to start a business, having people trust you with your business and to actually stock your products or have that sort of, when you go in and then you tell them, they ask, so who's your boss or who's this other person? I'm like, no, this is my product. I've developed this for 4 years. And they're like, oh, really? Okay, we'll get back to you. So it's that sort of the challenge I'm finding at the moment is having people having that trust in a Black person in general, starting their own business and it being legitimate and them having that sort of confidence that this product is actually a legitimate product. So that's one of the few challenges I'm getting. But also back in my day, whenever, like, not back in my day, I'm speaking as if I'm old. But so back whenever I was working, for example, I worked for a pharmaceutical magazine. A majority of the work I would have done, I would have worked with the likes of Pfizer, AstraZeneca, MSD. And one of the challenges I had was advancing in my role. And it always is because I was working for an independent small company. The manager was never comfortable in moving me up in any other, like, the most I was able to become was a business development manager. That's it. I couldn't move up to director level. I couldn't move up to anything because they didn't think that my image was positive enough or strong enough to uphold the company. So it was one of those small little things that hold you back, and those were obstacles, especially when you've poured your sweat and worked really hard and moved up, and then you're put in a position where you're like, what was the point? I may as well just stayed at the bottom and never bother to even move up, because if there's no advancement, what's the point? So it's those kind of difficulties that you face in terms of office work and stuff like that. So I don't know if I answered the question. I think I may digress a little bit.
No, absolutely, and it's spot on. It just brought to my mind something that I made a conscious decision about. In my last line of work, I made a conscious decision that I had no desire to ever apply for any management position, simply because I felt that, as you say, what was the point? And simply because I felt that even if I were to be given such a role, it would constantly be undermined by
Yes.
perhaps other people who
People,
felt
yep,
that they needed to tell me how best to
I
do
could,
the
yeah.
job that they've placed me in. And I may have been only placed in that job perhaps as quote unquote a token. I know
Yeah.
this whole thing of tokenism is a catch 22. You're back and forth. So that's not what we're going to get into.
Oh
But
yeah, no,
really, it's a powerful point that you've made.
And just to follow on from what you said, Yolande, isn't it so sad though? Because the story that you just narrated there, where you're saying, I'm not going to bother myself to apply for any managerial role because I don't
yeah,
think I'm actually going to be allowed to function effectively in that role because of people trying to undermine, is a familiar story for many Black people, and particularly Black women in the workplace. And look at how much talent, how much experience and expertise that workplaces are losing as a result of that. And these are the problems. This is the impact on industry, on commerce, on workplaces, on the marketplace, when we don't actually do what's necessary to encourage and support colleagues who don't look like the ones who are in leadership right now.
yeah.
We lose so much talent and experience because of that.
I find that,
Absolutely.
like, especially in big corporations, you'll find that they'll be quick to actually hire an outsider than promote a person of color or anybody that's different to what the ideal norm of that role should be within that sector. So they will always, like, for example, I'm speaking from experience where I was told, like, if you get this amount and you do this within the short period, you will get this position. And by all means, when you're told you're going to get a promotion, if you work hard, I worked really hard and I went above and beyond. And then we had an annual event that we did where we invite quite some of our big clients and, just socialize, just to thank them. And then on that day, I've worked so hard. I'm thinking this is the day I get my promotion. I'm so excited. I even told my mom, I've told everyone, I'm excited because we were told. And I even have, when you have emails and everything, it was written down. So it wasn't like where the boss tells you do a good job and, I'll give you something. But no, she wrote this down. And we're sitting and at the table. And then she goes, oh, guys, I'm going to introduce someone. This is such and such. They will be the head of this and this. And I went, I literally,
Wow.
when your heart goes from,
You're crushed. Yeah.
oh, like the night was supposed to be a success, but it felt as if my whole world had just been crushed. And from that moment on, I told myself, I'm never going to work for someone. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Because the constant, disappointment year after year. And then the excuse that you're given is, you're a wee bit too young, I don't think this role's good for you. It's like, what if you didn't think it was good for me? Then why did you actually even entertain the idea to me? If you thought I wasn't capable, you must have thought I was capable, or you were just using me to get where you needed to be so that you could hire the person that you wanted to hire and take over from that position. So yeah, it hurt.
Yeah.
And the saddest part is that they hired this person. 6 months down the line, the person messed up and she had to ask me to come because I quit. That's what I done. As soon as we arrived back in Belfast, I handed in my notice and I was like, thank you very much. I think I will find work elsewhere. That was sad. So yeah, it's sad that, you are encouraged to do well. And then when you've done well, then the rewards that you're promised are then given to someone else. And majority of the time is because you're Black and most people would say it's probably because your personality is too harsh. And don't get me wrong, as Black women, we tend to be very headstrong, but we have reasons to be. No, yeah, we have reasons to be.
You find that you don't get anywhere unless you're able to assert yourself. But of course, the word that's used instead is aggressive rather than
that's what it, yeah. If we don't have that, like if we don't appear strong, people will walk all over you. So people fear what they can't touch, and sadly, we are probably one of the most.
Listen, Swan, you know what? We're going to bring you back when we're going to have the episode on the angry Black woman syndrome. That's a whole other conversation.
I'm really close to that. I wish I
want to bring.
I get so passionate.
I know, I can see it. Good on you, Swan. You took a stand for yourself, started your own business. We wish you every success. I want to bring Patricia in because Patricia's sector is one of the sector that we see a lot of migrant women in particular, who arrive in the UK working within this sector of providing care. And I am going to share an experience that I've had very recently, but I want to bring Patricia in to talk about some of the challenges, if any, that she herself has experienced or is experiencing within this field of work. Patricia?
Hi. Oh my God. I can sit and talk all day because I've faced loads of challenges and it's not just with your employer, but it's with the people that you work with. The job is a hard job, but it's also rewarding. You can be looking at a patient and you are racially discriminated by that patient. You'll be called names like the N word and the B word, and it's just harsh. It's a harsh environment where you work hard and your reward is not been seen at all. So it's as if you're working and nobody's not seeing you. You're not being acknowledged. You've been pushed aside in the corner. If you raise a concern, it becomes a problem. It's as if your voice is not being heard. You can't speak for yourself. I can share one incident where I sent an email to my top manager and that email was not acknowledged. But I was called into a meeting and I was disciplined. But the reason why I was disciplined is because the email was a harsh email, and they slipped up and they didn't know how to deal with the situation then. And I sit and I think, why are we Black people been suffering so much? We suffer a lot. We work hard, and you would find the hardest of the work have been put to us. Other people are refusing to do they give us what they don't want to do, and they push us in the forefront to take the abused and to take the everything that you would think about in the health sector. They don't want to do a certain shift, they would put you on that shift. And you can't have certain time off, like school time off, half-term break. Everybody else would want it. They will not acknowledge you because you are not important. And it's difficult because you find yourself feeling like you're demoralized, you have no value. Sometimes I feel like I am just there because, and it can go on, but sometimes you've got to look past whatever you're facing, because I am determined. And one of the things that I've been encountering is that they will always say, oh, you're aggressive, the way you speak, the way you look, your tone of voice, or you're angry, you're always upset. And it's not that. You've got, as Swan said, you've got to be firm with you've got to be firm. You've got to put your feet down. You've got to stand up for yourself, because if you don't, then people just walk all over you. Everybody just think, oh, you Black, you here. This is what you're here for. What you doing here? This is the only thing that you can do. But sometimes they look beyond what we are capable of doing, and just look at what they want us to do as Black people.
Wow, absolutely. I'm sitting here and I'm actually thinking, I couldn't do your job. I remember very recently, Angela, I don't know if you would have seen this. There was an article very recently in the Belfast Live, I think, about a couple of nurses from some part in one of the African countries who are here and experienced snow for the first time and were out dancing in the snow. And you really needed to see the comments on Facebook, things like, are they trained? Why are they here taking our jobs? And I thought, we just had COVID. We only needed COVID to remind us of how much Black people worked hard, or people of color, how many of them were on the front line, bearing the brunt of that experience, of death amongst Black people. And then really people's memory is quite short.
Oh gosh, it is.
And the abuse we get, particularly within the healthcare sector, I would say, I don't know, it is quite, to me, very, very disheartening.
Can I just weigh in on that a little bit, Yolande? Because I in my role sort of within the church, I regularly interact with people who are working within this sector, right? And relatively new into the country. And what we're seeing is a situation where it's not even just, and what Patricia described is what Black people have been facing day in, day out for years within that sector, where the person you're trying to help is actually abusing you. That always gets me. I mean, talk less of, the abuse and bad treatment from employer, but the person you're trying to help is also doing the same, right? But now what we're seeing is that as you said, Yolande, we're seeing a lot of Black women within that sector. We're seeing migrants who are relatively new in the country coming into that sector, right? And with that is coming some particularly worrying trends. So, for example, I have heard stories of people who, and this is not just a Belfast thing, you hear about it in England, you hear of stories where the employers have brought them in, have provided them with the job because they needed accommodation. And right now there is an accommodation crisis in Belfast, and I think in other places as well. They then provide accommodation for them as well, but they provide that accommodation at extortionate rates. So you've got your employer paying you low wages anyway, giving you shifts that nobody wants to do. You can't get to church, you can't go to your children's things, all of these things, right? And on top of that, the accommodation that you're in, your employer is charging you in some cases almost double what is the market rate
Right.
And I'm looking at this and it's looking like, whoa. So some people are throwing terms around like this is looking a little bit like a form of slavery, a form of modern, forced labor, where you are your employer has totally helmed you in, right? In your workplace, in your home belongs to them. You can't get over broke, because of this situation. This is a problem. I mean, Patricia, I don't know whether you're seeing, I know you've been in the country for much longer, but are you seeing this as well on the ground?
In one of my previous job, the company that, well, it's a big company that I was working with, they normally bring nurses from different countries, so from African countries, because there were two nurses from Ghana came in, a husband and wife. And just from what Angela said, the company took care of everything. So their accommodation, their for the first 6 months, they look after them. And they took their passport as well. But it meant that they've got to work extremely hard or harder to get whatever they have to get. They've got to ensure that they pass their exams, because they have to sit an exam when they get here as well, in order to get their PIN, so that they can carry on working. But apart from that, they become like, what you're saying is modern day slavery. They have to work extra hard because nothing for them is easy. They've got to put in extra shift, and you would hear they're saying that they've got family back home that they have to support, and how are they going to support their family with whatever they're earning? And it's difficult because you put in long hours and you get little or nothing for that long hours. And if you want to get whatever you want to get, you've got to work triple, double, whatever time you've got to work it in order to get it. And it's really hard. The sector is hard. It's a hard sector. I mean, I think they make it difficult for the people who really love the job, because people are not loving what they're doing anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's really hard. I did say, and feel free anybody to interject. I did say I wanted to share an experience that I've had very recently, because it's something that I'm still not sure I've managed to deal with just yet. So I work currently in a role where I work to manage finances of people who don't have mental capacity to do so. And so very recently, one of my clients, we do have contact with our clients, some of them who can have conversations. One of my clients phoned in on a mobile phone, my work mobile, and I answered, and she was screaming and shouting, and she was basically saying, could you come to my house right now? I need the brown girl to get out of here. And she was shouting at someone in the background. And so for a minute, I started to take in my mind, I was like, okay, calm down. What exactly is going on? Is there someone there with you? And she began to explain, yes, and I want her out of here. I want my regular carers. I don't want to see her. And then I started to connect that obviously she's got a person of color there.
Mm-hmm. And
providing care for the night. So I said, okay, can I speak to the person that's there with you? So person came on the phone. I said, if you don't want her to touch your phone, put it on speaker. Person came on the phone and I said, look, are you okay? Explain why you're there. The person was an agency staff for the night, replacing. And I said, okay, how do you feel? She said, well, look, there's a process that I can call my employer. And then we would have kind of like a debriefing the next day, but I can pass the night because I have an out room that I sleep in and I don't necessarily need to be in her space, blah, 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 blah. So we did a bit of safeguarding because we have to around, phoning externally. But what stuck with me was something that I think a lot of employers overlook, is what I would like to refer to as vicarious trauma. I felt like I was the person that was quote unquote being insulted and assaulted, although it wasn't me. And I'm thinking in my mind, this client has not yet met me. She actually physically hasn't met me yet. And I'm wondering if she's not familiar with accents, because if she was, she would actually know she's speaking to another brown girl. And it really was something that I felt was so awful to vicariously experience, that I can imagine what people go through within that sector. And I say hats off, because I don't think I could do that job, honestly.
It's difficult though, because what you're saying there, two things can happen. That person can be traumatized. That person can feel like, I don't want to be here. She could have left. But you think about the client first and foremost, the person that you're looking after.
And that's the sad thing.
becomes your priority, because there was one incident where I walk into a room to look after, so the client buzzed the call bell and I went in, and it was very rude. And then he said, "Oh, that's why you black girls can't stay in job." And I said, "Excuse me." And I looked at him. I said, "Look, I am not a black girl. My name is Patricia. And if you want to address me, you address me as Patricia." Sometimes I felt like I've got to be firm but respectful at the same time. And then when you find yourself in that situation, there's another flip side to it. You get no support from the management staff.
Yeah.
So
and that's because a lot of times the excuse is that that's part of their condition. It's their mental health condition. But in my mind, it's very difficult to separate racism from a manifestation of a mental health condition, because very often mental health condition is used as an excuse. And I dare say that because it's very difficult to separate the two. And I'm not a professional in the field, but when you're the one receiving the abuse and yet you still have to make sure that you put the client first, that's a very, very difficult thing to do. It really is.
I think when it comes to healthcare workers and being abused by residents and even the employer, it just comes to the fact that the actual laws set in place tend to protect the employer and tend to protect the residents themselves, but they actually don't protect you as a staff member. Because even if you look, so for example, like during my university years, I did care work. I worked as a support worker. So I've done the graft. But one of the trainings that you don't get actually trained how you protect yourself from a resident throwing stuff at you, throwing abuse at you. They say you have to remain calm and everything else. But how do you remain calm when someone is hurling abuse at you? Therefore, you have to sit there, or someone's throwing a chair across the room at you and it hits you, and yet you're supposed to remain calm and take it as is. And then if you complain, but you signed up for this job, but yet at the same time, if they complain against you, that's your job gone. So therefore, I find that the laws themselves don't protect you as a worker. They're more to protect the clients themselves, and it's unfair because majority of the people that do these jobs are us.
Genuine.
And locals don't want to do the job for two reasons. They can't do it. They don't I must admit, the patience that comes and the empathy that comes from a person that has to sit there and take it all day being called names, and then to come back and say, "Mrs. Brown, would you like a glass of water?" and smile while that person has just insulted you with every name under the sun. It's remarkable, and I guarantee you, most people from Northern Ireland, I'd say, would never do that job, and yet they're the people who have the goal to say, "You're here stealing our jobs. You're here doing this." But you're like, okay, fine. Seeing as I'm stealing your desired jobs, why don't you go and take them? I'll give it right back to you. I'll do what you do and sit at home.
I don't want you to get banned from Northern Ireland, sweetheart.
I've voiced my opinion on this many times. You're perfectly fine.
Listen, Swan, just on something that you said there, you said that they're not taught how to protect themselves. And I think recently I was speaking to a friend of mine who is a nurse, who came to this country about a few years ago as a qualified nurse, and therefore is kind of in a lead role in where she works. And she has carers who are kind of, working, with her. So she was talking about one particular patient who didn't want her to dispense, because as a nurse, your job is to dispense things that a carer is not really supposed to be doing. And this patient absolutely refused, wasn't going to take it from her. So she's there, she's the only nurse on duty. What is she supposed to do? The patient still has to be looked after. So she had to call a carer who is white, instruct the carer in the moment, give the carer the amount of medication, watch the carer dispense the medication and make sure that the client, just watch the whole thing, because she couldn't as a nurse do it. When she was telling me this, I was thinking to myself, some crazy employer at some point could go down the line and say that was misconduct because because a carer is not. But you're having to. How do you navigate these issues where you're trying to put your patient first, but the patient is making your job difficult, but you're still going to have to be creative to make it happen. There is no protection. There's nothing that I'm aware of around those things.
There's nothing.
You're 100% right, because seeing that situation, if she had not given the patient the medication, and her reasoning was there was no other nurse and there were carers. They would have went, why didn't you ask one of the carers to do it for you? And then if that carer had made a mistake, why would you ask the carer? You should have. So
Yeah.
there's nothing actually. It's a no-win situation, and it's even worse when you're a
Lord
person
help.
of color, because you're in the front page. This woman from I'm from Zimbabwe. It's like this woman from Zimbabwe. So, served did not give a resident's medication or use the carer to. The story will be spinned in such a way that you yourself, it's hard. The laws don't
Yeah.
protect us at all.
Well, I have to say that despite all the challenges, women are doing great work
Good.
across the
There.
globe. Forbes
There.
magazine, for example, an article in Forbes, 20th of January, and this is in the context of the US. It says women have drastically changed the business landscape over the past 5 years. Yeah, kudos. American
That's it.
Express, State of Women-Owned Business, and this is another magazine, states that
Yeah.
women-owned businesses have grown at double the overall population rate, again in respect to the US. We're not quite sure what the statistics look like within Northern Ireland or even the UK for that
We
matter,
don't know.
but we
Yeah.
do believe
But
that
it's good.
women are entrepreneurial in spirit, and they do in fact come up with some very creative businesses
You
from the
cannot hold
kitchen,
the woman
from
down.
wherever. Women are very, very creative when it comes to business. So do you ladies actually think owning your own business is the way to go? You've already answered that, Swan. So, Angela, even you, Patricia, for me, I'll probably say I think it really is the way to go. And I've been struggling, toying with a lot of ideas very recently or for a long time. My passion, despite the fact that I can't cook very well, I would really, 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 really love to have an authentic Caribbean, real bad boy restaurant somewhere in Belfast. That would be my absolute dream. Just the whole vibes, recreating Caribbean vibes the real way. That would be my dream. What about you, Patricia?
I think one of the things that I've been looking at for a long time is to have a cleaning company, because I love cleaning.
Aww.
And I am so passionate about it. I sometimes I think I'm obsessed because I'm just cleaning.
Me and you
And
both.
that's one of the things that I would love to do. I love cleaning, and I love to see a spotless, clean place. So that's one of the things that I would, even if it's to just start with a little van and you go by different companies and you start small and then establish big. That's something I would really like to see happen. And a nice little food van as well, where as Yolande said, we have some nice Caribbean food cooking, park the food truck somewhere and just sell food to people.
Patricia, go for it. I mean, it said you love it. It's your passion. It's going to take hard work. I'm sure Swan would testify. But because it's your passion and you love it, go for it. Go for it. I hope that the next time when we speak to you, maybe we'll have you back on the podcast. Yes. You say, I went for it and I started it myself. And I told those people, I've done my own thing. I'm out.
We've got to get on one of those programs where we pitch our ideas, but it wouldn't be unique. So I'm not so sure how we'll get funded.
You bring your own uniqueness to it. Bring the vibes to cleaning.
To be honest, I have to say, I must admit that Patricia and I are friends. I do know her been to her house. It is clean. It is spotless. And we both call each other OCD queens. So,
well, do you know what? Until you've tried, and you never know. So I always say, I always encourage people to try it. And if you fail, well, you tried. No one can turn around and say you didn't try. But you will see this industry. You will always have clients. You just need to be good at it. And if you're good at it, Patricia, I'll be your first client. Don't worry. I'll be your first client. That's it. I'll go buy that massive 50-story building at some point, and I'll be your first client.
I didn't give away your secret, Swan, that you're actually coming to us today live from South Africa. Is it holiday or business, love?
Family.
Beautiful home. Beautiful. I'd love to visit South Africa one day.
Oh, you should. I recommend it. I will be your host. I will definitely. I recommend it. I recommend it. But yeah, no, I genuinely see when it comes to women in business, I recommend it because there is nothing more exciting than to see a woman passionate and see if someone's passionate about something and then they push it forward. And only thing I will say to you, if you're going to do this, be prepared that you will suffer.
Yeah.
Right,
It's not an
ladies?
easy ride.
It will be pain.
You will suffer. And if you have a day job, don't quit it until you've made it.
Right.
Like people
Right.
tend to
That's
think that
that's
That
the
in itself is
entrepreneurial tip.
challenging, though, isn't it, Swan? It's challenging
Right.
as well, isn't it? When you're trying to maintain a day job while trying to build up a side hustle.
Yes.
That period is harder than any other period, right? But
I
how
don't,
long did you have to do that for?
I started 4 years ago, and 4 years ago that was just the development process of it. So I was trying to get a development of the products themselves and then getting approval because I'm going for a certain industry, you need certificates. So to get those certificates, you need to get them approved. So that takes a while. But then whenever the products launched, I couldn't just give up my day job and be like, oh, I give up. I was like, I don't know how that's gonna happen. Maybe I could start off excellent, falling off the shelf, life's going great. And then 2 months down the line, it all
I see.
disappear. So people, you never quit your job until at least a year, or you've made enough that you can survive at least a year without it. Like I don't understand people that up and quit their entire job to start a business. I don't get that. Like
Well, they've
who's
got
paying
some
your
money
bills?
stashed away somewhere.
That's what
That's what
yeah.
happens.
That's for
Unless
some.
you have enough savings, but also at the same time, savings are emergencies. That's what
Yeah.
most people don't understand. They're emergencies, not to be
Not
used
the
as
plan.
no part of no. It's like it's
Woman
whenever
like a
let's say
true Black woman. Ladies,
you
I'm
always
gonna bring it to a
understand.
close. Any final words? Anybody feel free before we bring this to a wrap for today? Any final words, Angela, Patricia?
Yolanda, I was just going to say, what if somebody is impacted by the stuff we discussed today in the workplace? I know that you have quite a lot of knowledge around this. Where can they go for help when they're dealing with a cantankerous employer?
Throw me in the deep end. I was going to bring it to a wrap on that note. Yes, I would say generally, if in the workplace itself and you're facing issues, whether it's issues of racism, discrimination, there is still always, in terms of Belfast, labor relations, equality commission, those are still always places to go. It's always great to be part of a union.
A union.
That would be the type of thing I would say. But if it comes to being impacted emotionally or otherwise by simply listening to our broadcast today, it just depends on what sort of emotions you're experiencing. There's always a lifeline, when it comes to suicidal ideation. There's quite a lot of places out there that provide help, particularly for Black people that are struggling. I would say there's quite a few in your areas, so you always can research your own area support networks. That's also very important, your area, because it will be specific sometimes to what's happening within your county or your area. So yeah, I mean, if I've missed anything, please feel free. Anybody, Patricia, I don't know in your line of work if there's any specific sort of referral agencies that you would use.
I just think what people need to do most is to educate themselves a lot around their safeguarding rules, the policies of the company. They need to ensure that they're with a union, because that is vital. It is important when you're in the healthcare sector, because the amount of different things that pops up, you need a support from a union rep or somebody just to give you some legal advice as to how to deal with whatever you're facing. The companies always have these crisis line that you can use as well, or you can be referred to your GP, and then they can refer you to different organization that would help you with whatever you're facing. But I think for us Black people, we don't go for help. We sit and we don't seek what we look. We just sit there and suffer in silence and think there's no help there for us. There was always help. And I've learned that the hard way, mind you. I've learned it the hard way. And there is always help, but you've got to look for that help. And the thing is, one thing is that the people that you're working with will not tell you certain things. They would not preview you to certain things because they don't want you to be aware of certain things. They just want you to be a worker, just work. You just work. You don't need to know the rest, the behind the scene, just work. So I think a lot of information, people just need to read educate themselves. And I think that's one of the reasons why I push myself to do the degree that I'm doing now, because I feel like I need to know more. I need to learn more.
Yeah.
I need to dig deeper into what's going on. I'm not just going to come here and be a healthcare worker and just, and it's lovely. I love it. I love looking after the old folks. I love chatting with the ones that really appreciate me. I love it. I love it. I'm in end of life care now, and I love it. I just
Wow.
love to sit there and hold somebody's hand when the family are not there and they're departing this world. I just love it. I love interacting with people, but it doesn't come easy. It comes with a package. It's a challenge.
Thank you. Thank you for that, for sharing that, Patricia. Your passion is audible, and we really thank you so much for joining us today. Swan, we thank you. We wish your business every success. And again, we say power to you and to all the women in business, all the women working hard on the night shift, the day shift, wherever you are. We love you. We appreciate you. We thank you so much. It's a wrap for us from Unmute. Now, keep raising the volume and the whispered conversations in our communities. And we will see you next week for episode 4.
And you can find us. You can find us on various social media platforms. So Instagram now. Instagram is Unmute Now. Facebook Unmute Now. Twitter Unmute Now 1. You can reach us on our website www.pivot UKPivot.com. Our YouTube, as you know, if you're watching it on YouTube, is Unmute Now. You can also listen to this on Anchor, Spotify, and various audio platforms as well. So I hope that I did justice to what you normally do for us with the wrap.
Thank you. It's a wrap from all of us here. It is goodbye and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.